What up, folks? Hi, Jax. Can you say hi, Jax? Look at the camera. Look at it. There you go. Jax says hi, YouTube. Yeah. Okay. Go. Go. You can sit up here. Run up here. Get up here. Come on. Come on. There you go. There you go. Yeah. Yes. 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 I love you too. You're a good boy. What's going on, guys? Today, I'm going to be reviewing The Savior's Champion by Jenna Moreci. You know, originally I intended to do my little Wheel of Time series thoughts video today. I guess we're doing The Savior's Champion. That's not what I had planned. To start off, if y'all don't know who Jenna Moreci is, she's a YouTuber who does like writing advice and writing advice. If you want pretty good advice, laced in a heavy dose of sass and sarcasm, check her out. She has a really popular channel, and her videos are pretty cool. I watch them pretty frequently. Jax, go. Changing my camera angle here. Anyway, she published, I believe, her second book, actually. I think she has Eve the Awakening as well. I believe the sequel to The Savior's Champion is about to release. Anyway, I just recently finished The Savior's Champion on Audible, by the way. This story takes place in a country that is ruled by a woman known as the Savior. Apparently this country was barren and a wasteland and just horrible place to be. The Savior came along. The Savior's magic caused the country to flourish, and every Savior has to have a sovereign, which is her husband. And in order to ensure that the best man is chosen for the job, they hold the Sovereign's Tournament, a series of trials that can be deadly. Not the best way to choose your husband, if you ask me, but hey, what do I know? Anyway, we follow along with Tobias, who sort of on a whim, but also not on a whim, goes ahead and joins the Sovereign's Tournament, even though he's very opposed to it, because his sister is very sick and in a lot of pain, and winning the tournament would bring him a lot of wealth, and he would be able to care for his sister. And so I don't know that the opening of this book is that strong. It's alright. Tobias is alright. His friend Milo is pretty cool. And his little family situation is nice. You know, Tobias lives with his mother and sister and really takes care of them and provides for them, and actually gave up an apprenticeship as an artist with like the most famous artist in the country in order to go work in the fields as a laborer and provide for his family. Anyway, after he joins this tournament, we follow Tobias through the trials with, 20 men? I believe there are 20. Maybe not. I might be wrong on that. But it's something like that. And then throughout the book, we follow him as he meets the other competitors, as he meets a couple other people involved in the trials, as he meets the current sovereign to the Savior. I guess this is kind of important setup, but the previous Savior was murdered, and like her daughters, along with a handful of women who he meets there within the Savior's court. And naturally, a romance develops, and it is a big part of the plot. As a matter of fact, towards the end of the book, I feel like it becomes the plot. The book is almost a romance. It's like a romance, action, fantasy. Now let's jump into some of our general criteria here. Number one, Characters. How are the characters in this book? How much did I like them? How well written did I think they were? Tobias is pretty cool. Tobias isn't great. He's a little bit whiny, but he gets stuff done, you know? And he does what he has to do. And he's likable enough. Tobias is a pretty good character. Another character we meet is, what the hell is her name? How did I forget? Our leading lady, Layla, is pretty interesting. There are some tropes about Layla that are kind of, it's secret. I have secrets, I can't tell you them trope is slightly annoying. It's honestly understandable, but that's been done so much that it gets kind of old. I see it so often in books where they're like, I can't tell you these secrets, I have to protect you. And where in her case, I think she was more afraid to tell him because of the reaction he would have, but also to protect him, and it's so overdone, man. So that knocks a few points off of it. But she's pretty cool too, I think. Her personality is pretty good. As an offshoot of characters, because romance is such a heavy part of this book, I'm going to include romance here. The romance between the two, I think, is actually fairly good. When they're on page, they have a lot of chemistry. There's a little too much consistent tone to it, I guess. It's that they always act the same with each other. There's not a lot of variance in the situation for the most part. And then when there is variance, it a little bit comes out of nowhere. But there was a point where Tobias was a little bit like, you are everything. And it was like, all right, dude, fucking, let's not do that. Let's not be that guy because it's super cringe. But excluding those moments, the romance was pretty good. So I think it could have been better, but their chemistry was 100% there. I think that's important if you're writing a romance, if you're writing a relationship. If you can't make chemistry between the characters work, the romance isn't going to work. Jenna did a good job of showing that there clearly is chemistry between these two characters. So the romance is pretty good. I'm going to go ahead and give the characters probably a 6.5 out of 10. Keep in mind, 5 is average, 5 is fine, so 6.5 out of 10 is good. It's above average. The plot is a little bit strange. Like, the first little chunk of it was a mix of interesting and rushed, because Tobias's family situation is interesting. His decision to join the Saviors tournament is both understandable but also rushed. Like, I understand the reasoning and I know why he did it and it makes sense to me, but it did feel a little bit rushed in that part of the book. I suppose I should throw that in with pacing rather than plot. But the trials, pretty generic trial thing, but the trials themselves are interesting. Some of Tobias's interactions with the other competitors are interesting. Some of them are boring. The big plot twist, the big secret is I've heard this a lot about this book, and they're right. You didn't surprise anyone with the plot twist. And I think I was like 5 chapters in, man, and I was like, all right, this is what's happening. And then a few chapters later, I was like, no, that's not what's actually going to happen. And then I slowly continued to be like, yeah, that's totally what's going on. And it was. The plot twist doesn't surprise you. But nonetheless, I felt like it's fine. The plot is probably another 6.5. We'll say the plot's a 7 out of 10. The plot was pretty decent, and I will say that the trials were neat. Like, they were cool. I liked the trials. It wasn't just run from a lion or something. They weren't completely simple. There was some creativity to them, and I enjoyed them. There was actually one that was hilarious involving pigs. Let me know what you thought about that. If you've read the book, put a little spoiler tag on your comment and let me know what you thought about that, because I thought that was great. I thought that was hilarious. Now jumping into the pacing, as I hinted on earlier, was a little bit inconsistent. And at first the pacing is kind of slow in introducing you, and then it kind of shoots forward real quick, and then it slows back down to my preferred pace of the thing during the trials. And then towards the end of the trials, it's like, okay, come on, let's go. Towards the end of the book, it was like, let's speed this up here, because you're just kind of running in circles. The pacing is inconsistent, but I don't think I was ever bored. I was never bored with this book. I was sometimes impatient, but I was never bored. I'm gonna go ahead and give the pacing probably a 7. The pacing is probably, I know I just sounded really negative on that, or at least it sounds like I sounded really negative on that, but the pacing was pretty good. And I'm gonna give the pacing a 7 out of 10. Because this book is a fantasy, I want to throw in another aspect, something that is very important to the fantasy community as a whole, and that's the world building. And in this book, there really wasn't much world building. If you're a big world building fantasy fan, it's probably gonna bother you. I didn't care. Didn't matter to me. Didn't bother me at all. But it will bother lots of fantasy fans, I think, because that is something that is held so highly within the fantasy community. I think it's actually a little bit overvalued. I know, taboo to say in fantasy, but it is a little bit overvalued depending on the story. And I don't think this was a story that required a bunch of world building. The scope of the story was fairly narrow. I don't think we needed to see a lot of what was going on behind the scenes. I will give the world building, 4 out of 10. There really wasn't much of it. It was a little bit below average. We know a little bit of the history of the country. I believe it is Thesson. I believe that is the country's name. Could be saying that wrong. I don't remember exactly. But yeah, we'll go with a 4 out of 10 for world building. Quickly, the prose. The prose of this book was actually pretty good. It wasn't, you weren't reading Patrick Rothfuss where it was like, oh, the prose is so amazing. But you also weren't reading like an older book where the prose gets in the way a little bit and it's told from more at an angle. The prose is pretty straightforward, I thought, and unobtrusive. I know Brandon Sanderson, I've watched some of his lectures on YouTube, and he talks about the prose that's stained glass, and you have the prose that is clear. I can't remember his exact wording, but one is your prose is supposed to be pretty and elegant and make the story enhanced, whereas the clear pane is you're not supposed to notice the prose. And I feel like Jenna is 100% the clear pane here. I didn't notice her prose, and I think that is largely a good thing. Overall, I enjoyed this book. I like the book. It's a good book, Jenna. I am 100% going to check out the sequel. And if you haven't checked out our YouTube, and you're interested in writing, as I am, as I know some of you guys out there are, definitely check her out. The Savior's Champion, we're going to go with a 6 out of 10. Better than average, but certainly not great.